We're all having a discussion on.
That's why I'm
I don't think about that bell very often throughout the week, but I find every Sunday when I sit down in this chair and the busyness of the morning begins to calm and we listen to Peggy's prelude and I look at the bell and I think, soon I'll ring that bell, offer a sound that brings us into community, that reminds us of this space that we create together. I love that bell. I love what it means and symbolizes. Symbols are important in our life, whether they're visual, whether they're embodied, whether they're a building, whether they're a sound, they matter. And so I love that sound that brings us into this space. Cast your vision here. Cast it in the middle of the hardest moment, into the world as it is, with threats of violence realized once again, and this time a capital besieged, a world whose frailty has been exposed again. Cast your vision here, at the turning of a new year, a turning full of promise and trouble still. While the memory lingers of holidays, chaotic and miraculous, into this day, a year past, we begin a new one. Offer the vision you've tried to talk yourself down from, your wildest dream, your audacious aims, the beauty that whispers to you to follow and build and become. In a world coming undone by fear and greed and distraction, divided by made-up borders between people and sowing the seeds of distrust, here, stir up your steadfast hope, your resolute clarity of all that is still possible. Be generous with your dreaming and brave. All paths to the future are born in this courage of imagination, this willingness to shed and then to salvage and to start again. The willingness to be this blessing for each other, to be this blessing. For this, we join together this morning. These words to inspire us, to call us into this space by Gretchen Haley. We come into this space undone, worn. We come into this space bruised and battered. But we come into this space again through all the trials of our own personal lives and the trials of the world around us. We come into this space. And so we welcome you here. Whether you've jumped in with joy or you found yourself barely getting out of bed, we welcome you into this space. Whether this is the life that you intended, or as we all know, it is full of super surprises, we welcome you into this space. We welcome you no matter your life story from where you have been, and understanding that we are all part of a shared life story that we create. We welcome you into this space this morning, no matter and because of all that has happened before us and all that might happen still to come. We welcome you into this space on this morning.
Good morning. I'm Vicki Hedin.
I'm Bob Hedin.
This morning's words are adapted from a reading from the UU congregation of Charlottesville, Virginia. Too often, when confronted with a challenge, we scramble to do something, anything. It feels better in the moment to match turbulence with turbulence, but stillness is often a good and valuable response. So today, we light this chalice in stillness. We confront the challenges ahead, we gather, we call on our sources of strength, and we grow our courage.
Now's the time we get to sing our chalice lighting response, Spirit of Life. Before we do, I wanted to thank the quartet of UUFCO choir members that led our opening hymn, Rebecca, Duncan, Tom, and Nancy. Now please join me in singing Spirit of Life. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Hey everyone, this is Jonathan. Sorry to interrupt there. Chayla seems to be bumped off the internet. So I'm going to go to Scott and we can continue with the Children's Covenant, and perhaps we'll come back to Chayla later with the announcements.
All right, sounds good. Right, we will do that and hope to see Chayla later. So our time for all ages today, I have to admit that in this Zoom world and not being here in our fellowship building, one of the things that I miss the very most is the time for all ages, that time to invite the children and the young at heart down to our koi pond rug, which I actually have under me this morning, just to get the sense of this time for all ages. And to just have that different kind of space where we as a community explore things in a different way, through story and through ideas, and just a way to communicate with each other. And we know it's truly a time for all ages, not just for our children. And so we know this week was a hard week in this country, for sure. Our television sets and our radios were filled with images and ideas of what happened in our nation's capital this past week on Wednesday. And so what I want to just say to our children and to all of us, that was a very sad day in our country. A very sad day. And in this moment, I trust that all of you are okay, that you're safe. That all of us right now here in Oregon, in Bend, or in Central Oregon, or wherever we find ourselves listening, I trust and hope that we can feel a sense of safety, just if right here in this very moment. So we know that on Wednesday, some people went to our nation's capital, and they went inside of our Capitol building, which is the building where our Senate and our House come together and create laws and do the work of our country. It's a very, very important, special building to this country. Some might say it's one of the most, if not the most important building in our entire nation. Well, people on that day began, or so they thought, as a protest. But what it quickly ended up was a riot. And a riot means that people are out of control, and they're doing things that are not kind and not nice. And some might have even called it terrorism. I know that I would. And they went inside the Capitol building when they weren't supposed to be there, when there was business being done on behalf of our country to elect the votes for our new president, Joe Biden, and our new vice president, Kamala Harris. And so on that day, Wednesday, it was a very bad day. I know it can be kind of confusing. The people who were in the building aren't there anymore. The people who went into that building don't speak for our country, at least for me. Our country has many different thoughts and opinions in it. But they don't move our country forward where I believe there are injustices. I believe that they were wrong in doing this, and I believe that they were very unsafe. They created a lot of unsafety for a lot of good people. They did a lot of unkind things. They stole things while in that building. While inside that building, they had symbols that are clear symbols of hatred. They picked this day on purpose because they wanted to stop a voting process. But they didn't stop that process, mind you. Those votes were still tallied, and our country is set to have a new president on January 20th, brought into power. And so it is a really confusing day. We know that there are an underscore of racism that caused this. We know that sometimes leaders can be dangerous when they have ideas that might not have the interests of peace and safety of people in mind. We know that when you're older, you'll be voting as well. And that's a very, very important part of being a part of a country. That's a democracy. And so, amidst all of this confusion and all of that, there's bound to be a lot of questions. And questions are just fine. We know that as Unitarian Universalists, right? Questions are fantastic. They're how we increase our understanding of things. So as you have questions, ask them. And here's the thing. You might not get answers because all the adults don't know all the answers right now either. That's for sure. It's a very, very troubling time. And sometimes right after something like this happens, that's very intense, there is a period after it where people are just trying to discern what happened factually, like what actually happened, but also what we feel about it as we move through different feelings like sadness and anger, and frustration and disappointment and helplessness. All these things we might be feeling. So as you have questions, I encourage you to ask them. Go ahead and ask them to those adults around you. You can ask me. You could send me an email through your parents at the church if you're just stuck on something. Parents, if you have questions, you can send them to me. I might not know the answers either, but that's what we do. We try and figure these things out together. And so as I was thinking of this week, it reminded me of this, a pine cone. So I got this pine cone right outside of our fellowship building. Now, you might not remember because it's been a while since you've been here likely, but our building is surrounded with these gigantic, beautiful pine trees. And pine trees drop pine cones, and inside the pine cones there are seeds. And the seeds go in the ground, and then they're nurtured from water and light and dirt, which gives it nutrients. And eventually, with time, these seeds grow tall into pine trees. And it got me thinking about how that is. A pine cone has the pine seed in it, which grows a pine tree. That's pretty straightforward, but pretty profound when you think about it. Like, if I wanted to grow a pine tree, I wouldn't plant, say, a maple acorn, would I? And I wouldn't plant, like a rose seed that might grow a rose. No, if I wanted to get a pine tree, I would need to plant a pine seed. That's just how it works. Like, if I wanted a giraffe, I would need to plant a giraffe seed. And if I wanted a waffle, I would need to plant a waffle seed. And if I wanted a song, I would need to plant a song seed way deep down in the ground. Okay, maybe it doesn't always work the same with seeds, planting them in the ground. But the idea is that if I did want a giraffe, my guess is giraffes come from giraffes. And if I did want a waffle, waffle comes from waffle mix. And if I wanted a song, I might start with that seed inside of me, where that song is coming from. Well, our actions work the exact same way. Who we are inside, the things that we plant inside of ourselves are what we become, what we grow into. And so in times like this, I like to think about what it is that I'm planting and nurturing inside of myself, right? Because that seed can't grow without that nutrients and the sun and the light. And so I want to always be careful and conscious about what I'm planting inside of myself, because that is what I'm going to become in the world. So in times that are troubling like this, I take extra care to make sure that I'm planting inside of myself and nurturing inside of myself those parts of hope and peace and kindness. Because sometimes when I'm angry, other seeds might try and get in there, and I might want to feel those, but I might not want to grow those out into the world in that way. Some anger I might, and that's okay. Some sadness I might, and that's okay too. But I want to be aware of what's happening inside of myself during these times, because that is who I'm going to become in the world. And the world is going to need us in time, because it takes time for that seed to become a large tree. And this country is becoming again and again and again, over and over through many, many years. And so the seeds that we're planting right now in ourselves and in the world are going to be the seeds that become the world that we live in the time to come. So even though it's a hard week, a confusing week, full of lots of questions, feel the feelings, ask the questions, and plant the seeds of hope, because that indeed is the world that we will live into, and the trees that will grow, and the shade that we will hopefully sit in the future. And I wonder if we found Chela again. If not, after our children's covenant, we'll do our joys and sorrows. Jonathan, could we have a slide for our children's covenant? And we'll say that all together. In this place, I am kind. In this place, I am loving. In this place, I am a friend to the earth and all animals and people. In this place, I am loved.
Okay, hi everybody. So I'm going to invite you to exercise a great sort of pause function. In other words, hold on to what Reverend Scott was just inspiring in our hearts, and hold that, because then we'll come back to the feeling of the service. This is the morning of all mornings, from my laptop cable to not give me electricity. Okay, so that's where we are. Good morning. And a special welcome to any visitors who may have been invited with our idea of inviting Frank to a UUFCO service, a friend, a relative, an associate, a neighbor, a co-worker. So if you are here, we give you a special welcome. And we have a form in our chat, a virtual visitor form that you can fill out and let us know that you're here. Or you can also just say hello when we do go to our joys and sorrows. The chat will be open at that time as well. This theme for January is imagination. And so throughout the whole week, we're invited to use our imagination in ways that are nourishing for ourselves, for our community, possibly our nation and our world. So let's use our imagination in whatever way we can during this month. Today at 12:30, I invite you to our first newcomers welcome. The membership team that's undergoing a really exciting reconstitution has realized that without being in the building where we have the kiosk and information available, the bulletin board, and even just meeting people during our physical coffee hour, that we needed to have a way of saying, well, what would you like to learn about us, and how can we get to know you as well? So that'll be today at 12:30. So if you'd like to join us, go to our calendar, our website calendar at 12:30. There'll be a link there. And so that'll be just about an hour or so, just a friendly opportunity to get together and share a little bit about UUFCO. So looking forward a couple weeks, 2 weeks from today, we'll have our mid-year all-congregation meeting, which will follow approximately immediately after the service, about 5 minutes after the service. So everyone is welcome to attend. Members of UUFCO, excuse me, are strongly encouraged to attend. There are some items coming before membership for a vote, and you should have received an email with the agenda and the items that we'll be voting on that day. Mark Steinberg invites you to contact him with any additional questions you might have. And there is a form in the email to comment on the things coming before vote. But also, if you'd like to speak that day during the Zoom session, contact Mark and he'll make sure that you are called upon. So this week we have a couple of new opportunities to get together. The Women's Connections team is setting up a monthly tea and sustenance, a nice afternoon tea to get together to check in. And this week it'll be at 1:45. Contact the Women's Connections at uufco.org if you would like to attend, and that's how you'll get the Zoom link. And also Phil Miskovich has invited folks who have been in the adoption triad, adoptees, adoption parents, or birth parents, to meet for a new adoption group. So information about that is in the ACE as well. Starting a week from tomorrow, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion group invite you to sign up for the Winter Challenge so that we can work on this process of becoming anti-racists to really set our hearts and minds toward the healing of our nation, which begins also with us. So email me, Chayla at UFCO, if you would like to participate in that. It'll be 4 weeks. There's more information in the ACE. Information will be sent to you twice during the week. And one thing that's exciting, one of our members' sisters' congregations may also be participating with us. So that's in the works. It's pretty exciting to share with some other Unitarian Universalists. Lastly, our talent show is coming up on Friday, January 22nd. Please email me or use the form in the ACE to sign up. We're getting a few more willing participants. Just a song, a poem, share your knitting project, all of those things. It'll be on Zoom, of course, and it'll be just a fun way of seeing one another in ways that we typically don't see one another. So with that, a big breath and just loving being here together and looking toward the horizon that we set toward a more just and beautiful world. So with that, blessings on your day.
At this time each week, we take a moment to hold space for the joys and sorrows, or both, that you may be carrying. Whether you arrived this morning with laughter in your heart or tears in your eyes, we want you to know that you are welcome here. In a few moments, the chat box will open and you'll be invited to share what's on your heart with us. And even if you don't wish to share, know that your joys, sorrows, or both are deeply held in this community.
And as we share our joys and sorrows, let's plant a seed of love. With this UU favorite, there is a love. The words are, there is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. I rest in this love. And then in the second verse, we rest in this love.
Invite us into the spirit of prayer and centering and calming, into a space of breathing deep, of settling into our bodies, into a space of depth and hope. I share this prayer from a colleague, Sean Whitmire. She wrote it this week in a state of frustration, in a state of presence, in a state of hope. Spirit of love, I'm done. I'm just done. I'm done talking about love when all I want to do is scream in anger at those who have no love for others and who stomp on those who need lifting up. I'm done trying to find peace in my heart when I want to shove the face of oppressors into the concrete filth of their own hate. I'm done. Spirit of love, are you done? Are you done breaking open my heart? Are you done with all of us who are complacent, who sit by the sidelines hoping someone else will do something? Are you done giving us comfort, courage, and hope? Please, dear Spirit, don't leave me. Spirit of love, I feel you sometimes, here by our side as we organize, as we run meetings, as we gather at church, as we vent our fears and our worries over loved ones. I feel you sometimes there at my side as I grip my teeth when I hear someone mumble, but maybe they deserve it. And I take a deep breath and I dive in. I feel you sometimes when I speak about you, welling up in me like a great wave I hope to pour out into the world. Spirit of love, you are there. You are always there. I forget that you live in me, that the choice is mine to reach out to you. Every time I listen with love, I reach out. Every time I speak with love, I reach out. Every time I act with love, I reach out. Spirit of love, you are relentless. And so, then, I shall be too. In this spirit of love. Amen.
A couple of years ago at a folk festival in Maryland, I heard Rob Van Zant and Janie Maneely sing a powerful song they had written called Lady Liberty. It's a song of sorrow and hope. And ever since that time, I had meant to learn the song. But in the last few days since the attack on the Capitol, I knew I'd have to learn it. It has not left my head for 2 days now. So with their very kind permission, I share it with you. Lady Liberty. Cry, lady, cry, let a tear fall from your eye. Raise your flame up to the sky. Cry, lady, cry, let a tear fall from your eye. Proudly raise your flame while you cry, lady, cry. Your children are in trouble, so many lost their way. Their fear is like a blanket, the truth has gone astray. You still light up the harbor, but blindness setting in, closing all the gates, people can't get in. Cry, lady, cry, let a tear fall from your eye. Raise your flame up to the sky. Cry, lady, cry, let a tear fall from your eye. Proudly raise your flame while you cry, lady, cry. We see you in the distance, strong against the wind, our sister in the struggle as the clouds roll in. Our Lady of the Harbor, raise your flame up high, standing fast above us, bright star up in the sky. Cry, lady, cry, let a tear fall from your eye. Raise your flame up to the sky. Cry, lady, cry, let a tear fall from your eye. Proudly raise your flame while you cry, lady, cry. You still hold the beacon, though some would dim the light. The flame of hope and freedom still ever in our sight. The flame of hope and freedom blaze ever in the sky. Guide us through the darkness, keep it burning bright. Oh, liberty, oh, liberty. Cry, lady, cry, let a tear fall from your eye. Raise your flame up to the sky. Cry, lady, cry, let a tear fall from your eye. Proudly raise your flame while you cry, lady, cry. Cry, lady, cry, let a tear fall from your eye. Raise your flame up to the sky. Cry, lady, cry, let a tear fall from your eye. Proudly raise your flame while you cry, lady, cry. Proudly raise your flame while you cry, lady, cry.
Raise your flame of hope and freedom while you cry. This song, I think, strikes at the core of what many of us are feeling right now, wanting to hold on to those grander ideas of freedom in this country, creating more freedom for more people, hope for the future, while also devastated by the week's events. That song so beautifully sung by Reverend Dan Schatz from the UU Church in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Indeed, this week we watched as our Capitol building was invaded by insurrectionists. They desecrated this national shared space that we claim together. They stole things, they defaced things, More than anything, they came into this place that we imbue with meaning of our grandest ideas of what we hope this country is not now, but could be in the future, in this imperfect democracy. We watched people come in and defile it with symbols of hate. Symbols like the Confederate flag being walked through the rotunda. Symbols of white supremacy. Symbols of anti-Semitic nationality. This week, this building was certainly a symbol of our democracy, of our nation itself, come under threat. It's made plain that there is much work to do, that we have healing to do indeed, but not just healing, revisioning, so that the wounds don't come like this again. And so this morning, I don't want to revisit the painful, traumatic images that keep seeming to come as the days progress. In fact, I had thought, foolishly, on Wednesday morning, I had this whole entire service almost planned out until the day unfolded. But that was Wednesday, I thought. Certainly by Sunday, things will have calmed down. And as a nation, we'll somewhat have moved on. But it seems like that well is only becoming deeper as we find out more and more things. Indeed, this is going to take a while, much more than a week, a month, and years to come to figure out how we got to this broken place and to move forward from it. As I was answering questions and talking with my son about this, it dawned on me that these are things that his generation are still going to be grappling with throughout their days in adolescence, young adulthood, indeed throughout their entire lives. When we see so-called patriots overrunning the U.S. Capitol building in an attempted coup, we might have this gut instinct to say, that's not who we are, that's not America. But we know on a deeper level that indeed it is. It might not be the America we hope for or want, but it's very much the America that we live in right now. And in fact, it's very much the America that we always have been. As a nation, we have a mean and evil streak running straight through to the core, right to our founding. Certainly lots of beautiful and noble ideals were founded with this nation, but so were so many ones that were destructive and harmful. We've always been a nation overrun by white supremacists. We can't escape it. Even if we try to ignore it or deny it, the truth itself is there. It doesn't go away if we don't deal with it and look at it. And indeed, that is in some ways what we are doing now. We're seeing this truth bold. We're seeing this truth out loud in its most privileged and its most brave, if you could say that, for the acts committed. No doubt, white supremacy as a power and an idea is lashing out. It's lashing out as it's being challenged in our country through voting, through cultural norms, through a wider inclusive spirit that this nation is undergoing. White supremacy is lashing out as privilege is being diminished. When the white supremacists left the Capitol, there were only 12 arrests. Many who broke into our Capitol building were escorted down the stairs and let go into the day. More arrests really only started after curfew and away from the Capitol building. And I can't help but to contrast this with the Black Lives Matter protests across the street from the White House on June 1st. You recall that day that the president wanted to walk across the street to a church that he had never attended for a photo op with a Bible, which I am almost certain he does not hold to, because he thought it would make a good photo op. And on that day, 300 protesters were arrested, after being assaulted with tear gas and flash bombs. That was for a photo op. In 2017, when Congress was trying to overturn the American Health Care Act, disability rights activists protested in the halls of Congress, where people are allowed to be, and 181 people were arrested that day, many of them in wheelchairs advocating for health care they needed to be independent. 15 people were physically dragged out of the hearing room, taken away from their mobility devices. The response on Wednesday was nothing compared to what I witnessed in Standing Rock against indigenous communities trying to protect their sacred land from a pipeline running straight through. What we saw on Wednesdays was more coordination than what I witnessed at the border, as a few hundred clergy peacefully attempted to hold a vigil at the border wall. What I witnessed on Wednesday was more force used in Portland than in our nation's capital this past year. Force used to protect an empty federal building, not our nation's capital filled with Congress doing the nation's work to elect a new president. And even those officers and police officers and troops that were gathered there on that day, last year here in Bend, those agents were more heavily fortified as they gathered to break up a protest to keep families together. Now, I do definitely note the bravery of those Capitol Police in their attempts, but they were simply not ready, simply outnumbered, simply not prepared for what might happen, which I find unfathomable. Mohammed Safa, though, helped me as I was beginning to find myself angrier and angrier, wondering why there wasn't more force used. I found myself going to a place that I'm not proud of. And Mohammed Safed, who works at the United Nations, reminded me. He said, "We're not asking you to shoot guilty white people the way you shoot innocent black people. We're asking you to protect innocent black people the way you protect guilty white people." A hard day indeed in our nation's capital, but a hard day indeed all over our nation. And on that same day, lest we forget, the Washington Post report that while rioters and supporters of President Trump were storming the U.S. Capitol, this violence overshadowed a deadly day across the nation as the coronavirus pandemic continued its surge. A record 3,915 people died of COVID-19 in the United States on that day, the deadliest day a pandemic has claimed yet here in this country, and more than 360,000 lives across the country. Indeed, our country is stretched and strained and pressed in a way that I don't know that any of us have ever witnessed in this country before. This word patriot keeps coming up. Patriot. Like the American flag, like other flags, this word means something, patriot. And indeed, there were patriots that day, but not the ones that we might hear called in the media from the far right, calling themselves patriots, as they listen to lies and conspiracy theory, trying to unrest a fair and free and legal election, the bedrock of our democracy. But I rest my thought on different kind of patriots. Patriots who, in their very quiet and simple ways, did their part to preserve and restore our democracy and some dignity. I think of those Senate aides who dutifully carried those cases, carrying the electoral votes into the chambers for certification, and those others who carried them out, making sure they were safe. I think of Maryland Representative Jamie Raskin, who appeared in person to certify this election, having only just the day before buried his only son. And I think of New Jersey Representative Andy Kim, who wasn't in the Capitol building during the siege, but after things had been cleared and order had more or less been restored, he went inside the rotunda, this place that he loved so dearly, and looked around and saw it littered with trash, and he simply started to clean up. He got a trash bag and started down the hallway and picked up trash, writing what he could in that small, simple way. When pictures of this humble action went viral, Representative Kim said that we are all ordinary people in extraordinary times. What I did isn't special. It's the same thing that drives us to volunteer at a homeless shelter or donate to a food bank. The idea that if something is broken, we can work to fix it. And so it's in that kind of example, that patriotic act, not expecting to be seen, but doing what's right to restore our democracy, even in that small way of restoring dignity to a symbolic room, helps us connect us to our humanity, helps us remember that we are in this together, helps us resist those impulses to bring out the worst in us, to see the humanity in another. Is this a moment to pat ourselves on the back and say, I was right, I saw it coming all along, to be smug? Or is this a moment to explore where we can all continue to do that next right thing? This is true patriotism, dedication to our greater values of freedom and liberty, the humility to complete this duty to our country, not to grab or consolidate power, but to serve people and to serve one another, to have that courage to do the small thing, even if it seems like it might not add up to much. We hope in this moment and in any of the moments in the days to come that we won't let ourselves be frozen by inaction or worry or fear, for we know that fear is the weapon of the divisive. And so we come together. We won't wait for hope to be fulfilled, but we will fulfill hope by acting, by some act, some small way. Greta Thunberg's quote strikes me so true in this moment. Once we start to act, hope is everywhere. Once we start to act, hope is everywhere. Not waiting for hope to happen, but knowing that hope comes alive through us in small and grand ways. The way a seed grows into a tree over time, that one small act begets that hope, brings it into the world. We're reminded of this in this song, A New World, by Lee Morris.
One seed is all it takes to grow a forest. One candle can light a dark room. One voice is enough, speaking words of love. Each moment becomes what we choose. Do you want a new world? A world that works for everyone? Open your heart and let it be. We can become the new world. Mother Earth beneath the sky. She's waiting for you and for me. Our dreams like the path for us to walk on. Our songs help our spirits align, and each little child helps remind us why we not only might, we must thrive. Do you want a new world, a world that works for everyone? Open your life and let it be. We can become the new world, Mother Earth beneath the sky. She's waiting for you and for me to be a new world. With just this thought, it has begun. And don't you wanna see a new world, your Mother Earth beneath the great sky, counting on you and me to be a new world, to be the new world.
And so we find ourselves leaning into that new world. I'm reminded of a poem, Good Bones by Maggie Smith. She says in it that the world is at least 50% terrible, and that's a conservative estimate, though she tries to keep it from her children. And then she says, though, that like any decent realtor who, as they're walking through a home, walks around chirping that, the good bones of the house, the good bones, the structure. And they say, this place could be beautiful, right? This place could be beautiful. We find ourselves in that space in our country right now, it seems. We've got some good bones here, but we might need to strip it down to the bare structure and do a lot of rebuilding. What shall we do to make this place, this country, more beautiful? In that speech that President Trump offered that morning, there were 23 occasions of the word fight that crowd heard. Fight. I've used this word as my own language before. Fight against systems of oppression. Fight against injustice. But I don't know that I want to use this word anymore. Words matter, as President-elect Joe Biden reminded us. The words we use matter. I'd much rather use words like love and beauty and create and resistance as we create this new world. A local minister friend, Stephen Koski, reminded me of a story of Bosnia in 1992. He said there was no bleaker and divided time than Bosnia in 1992. Veteran Smalevec was a Bosnian born in Sarajevo, and he was the principal cellist of the prestigious Sarajevo Opera Theater. But in 1992, the opera had been destroyed, the economy shattered, national unity disintegrated, and ethnic cleansing flourished throughout the land. Vedran described Sarajevo as the capital of hell. On 4 p.m. on May 17, 1992, a long line of starving people in front of the only bakery were all shot. 22 people died that day. The next day, hungry people lined up again for bread. Certainly they would die if they didn't get bread to eat, but they also feared of dying simply waiting in that line. That is what it looks like to be hopeless. That's what it looks like to live in fear. But Vedran chose beauty and resistance and love. He dressed in an all-black suit and the white tie that he wore every night to the opera before it was destroyed, and he carried his cello to that square and a chair, and he sat down in that space that had come to mean death and despair, and he began to play. He played and he played, and he made real and manifest in that world hope and beauty, the thing of life. And he returned to that square every single day, whether there were more shootings or not, for 21 days straight, for each person that had been killed in that bread line. He sat there and he played in defiant hope and resistance, that resilience of humanity, of the human spirit, which simply will not be destroyed. Today there's a monument, a statue in that very square of a man playing a cello. It's not a tribute to his music, but to that spirit of hope and beauty that he brought into that moment. That is the way that he chose to resist. And so what we will sink ourselves into in these coming weeks and months is so very important. To not slide into divisiveness, to not slide into hate or dehumanization. We don't want to dehumanize anyone else. It is perhaps some of our hardest work, that first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every single person. And so this is brave and courageous work, to do that, to try and see it ourselves, to wrestle with that, and to help others to see it as well. In this time to reject all that we see that is destructive in the world, to reject lies and opportunism, to reject long past time, to reject white supremacy. It's time to embrace compassion, to embrace truth, to embrace this transforming power of love. As we face this division that faces our nation, may we hold our beliefs with an integrity of the open mind and the wisdom of this compassion. It's all too easy to believe that this is the way that it has to be, that it's not realistic or too difficult to dream of a better way and a better world, a new world, but we know that is not the case, and it never has been. There is a better way of being with one another, and that's the way that we seek, the one that honors the bonds and the deep interconnection of all things and respects the relationship that then comes forth from that. May this spirit be present in all of our work for freedom. May this spark of divine goodness in each and every one of us come into the world and make that hope that we reach for real through us. Another world is possible. We have to imagine it first, but another world is possible. It is a world with love and care and compassion. And this world can only be brought forth through love and care and compassion, a strong and ardent love and compassion. But that's the love we bring into the world. That is the force that creates the world that we hope for and dream about. Perhaps not right now, but there are good bones here, good bones, and we can make this place beautiful. May it be so.
All
That song was originally written in the 1940s as World War II ravaged the world, and Woody Guthrie wrote that song. It was at that time about fighting the Nazis overseas, but the song calls out hatred and greed and systemic racism even still today. 70 years later, these lyrics are still quite relevant, it would seem. And so we end on that rousing rendition because I believe that all those fascists are bound to lose. They have to be, because of that resilience of human spirit, because of hope, because of beauty, because of love, because of the way that life affirming calls out to us to create it in the world. That version by Rhiannon Giddings and the Resistance Revival Chorus. Well, we hope that you'll consider joining us for our chat room, our virtual coffee hour after our service today, where we're not prescribing a question per se, but we're just inviting a space to say, how are you doing right now after this week? It's good to be together in this space after such a hard week. We come together and we light a chalice at the beginning of our service, and we extinguish it at the end of our service to frame our space. If you've lit a chalice in your own home, we invite you to extinguish it at this time as we say our covenant together, this fellowship. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. The quartet from the choir began us with the song, "There is More Love Somewhere." That's a deeply theological statement, a faith that there is more love somewhere. And we're going to keep on until we find it. And then we're going to bring it to life. And after we've found that love, we can sing the song again. There is more love somewhere. I offer these words as a benediction from the Georgian Senator-elect Reverend Raphael Warnock. Will we play political games while real people suffer? Or will we win righteous fights together, shoulder to shoulder? Will we seek to destroy one another or heed the call towards the common good, building together what King called the beloved community? May it be survival and justice. May we make that fight into one of love and beauty and resistance. May it be shoulder to shoulder. And may it be beloved community. And may we be part of the force to make that so. This day and every day. Amen.